Hey. Well, there was once this imbecile who made some comments on a video of mine where I was talking about Sri Lanka. And this idiot asked me if I don't live in Sri Lanka, if I don't have Sri Lankan citizenship, if I don't participate in the political process, and I don't identify with their culture, why do I call myself Sri Lankan? Well, what this idiot didn't know is basic anthropology, in particular, ethnicity versus nationality. Now, my nationality is, of course, American, but my ethnicity is Sri Lankan American. So there's a major difference between ethnicity and nationality. But why would I identify with being Sri Lankan at all? Shouldn't it be better for me to forget about that? Well, I think his point, which this idiot wasn't really getting at very well, was that we should forget about our identity and simply identify as being human, so that we don't have any us versus them mentality, so there's no divisive boundaries between us, which is an idealistic goal to have. But there are other considerations to make, and I can understand that point of view, and it is benevolent in a sense, but there are other considerations to make, especially if you're a minority. And I want to discuss some of those things and why it is actually very important to care about where you came from and your heritage and things like that. When I was young, we moved to Canada when I was just a few months old, then we moved to America when I was, like a year or something. So I spent my entire life growing up in the West, growing up in America. My parents were the typical Sri Lankan parents, fresh off the boat, have thick accents. My mom couldn't speak English when she first came here, at least not very well. They never really took the time to teach me about Sri Lanka and Sri Lanka's history, maybe because they simply didn't have time. They were working a lot. But, so as a result, I was I never learned how to speak Sinhalese. I don't have a Sinhalese accent at all. And my culture, what I've been acclimated to completely is American culture. That's what my culture is now. And when I was growing up in America, I remember being so embarrassed and ashamed of being Sri Lankan, of being brown. I would never mention where I came from. And whenever somebody brought it up, asked me where I came from or something like that, I was always evasive and I didn't like talking about it. I was very uncomfortable talking about it. Because I was embarrassed. I thought that being Sri Lankan was geeky. I thought it was lame. And, no one wants to feel like that. No one wants to be a geek. I remember my sister once had this Indian friend, and she always talked about India, and we would always make fun of her for doing that. But why on earth did we do that? Because we thought it was geeky. Looking in hindsight, I'm so angry at myself for doing this, but I had a good reason for being embarrassed. It's because I lost my identity. I didn't have any identity other than trying to conform as much as possible to being American. I was striving so hard to be American that I forgot who I was. And the thing is, I'm not like it's like Malcolm X said, I'm not like a Jew. I'm not like a European that was fresh off the boat. I'm not white. So the first thing you see when you look at me is my skin color. It's like the black man can't hide. That's what Malcolm X said. A Jew can say he's something else. And they often say that they're something else, if they're ashamed of where they came from, if they're self-loathing. But the black man can't hide, and neither can I. I'm brown, and that's the first thing you see. So unless I put on a lot of makeup, and that would be going very, very far, you know instantly what I am. And like Malcolm X said, when you hate the roots of the tree, you end up hating yourself. You cannot find the person who has a good self-esteem if they hate their culture and where they came from, if they're embarrassed by it. You cannot find someone like that. It's impossible. Because that's who you are. And then finally one day I realized this. I realized how stupid I was being. And I did a complete reversal on that. And I was not only accepting who I was, being a Sri Lankan, being brown, but I was proud of it. And it was extremely important for me to do that, because then it was healthy for me, for my self-esteem and my self-image. How I thought about myself improved. And this is a problem for many minorities living in America. Oftentimes you will find Europeans that come to America, white Europeans that come to America, who try so desperately to become American. That's why a lot of them are conservative. They become very conservative because since they're white, they can kind of get away with it. Whereas the black man, the Indian man, they can't do that. They're not white. So we are forced to accept who we are, or we end up hating ourselves, which could lead to all kinds of bad shit. Now, that's one very important consideration. The other thing is that when I have children, let's say I decide to get married to a Polish woman, for example, and we have kids. They're going to be half Polish, half Sri Lankan. How on earth could they ever know or be proud of or even care about their Sri Lankan heritage if their father doesn't care? If I don't care about Sri Lanka, how can I expect my children to care? I mean, at least my parents cared about Sri Lanka. They're Sri Lankan. It's just they didn't do a good enough job of teaching me about Sri Lanka. I had to do that on my own. Well, obviously parents are a huge influence on their children. What the hell am I doing here? You know, we are all struggling so hard to survive and to make a name for ourselves and to have some meaning. I mean, life, like I said before, life fucks us all over. We are enduring such hardship and struggling. And for what? To be forgotten? To be forgotten is a terrible thing. And the number one way to forget, for people to forget about your existence, is to not teach your children properly. If my children forget about being Sri Lankan, then everything that I had to fight and struggle for will be for nothing. Everything my ancestors had to fight and struggle for will be for nothing. Because even though Sri Lankan blood is in their bodies, it's not in their minds. You have to teach them. That's the only way they'll learn. It's the only way. So I have to care. For the sake of my children, caring and being proud of being Sri Lankan, because that is who they are too. You can't forget who you are. It's important. Now, about being proud of being, of your skin color, okay, we have things like black pride or brown pride. I never really heard of brown pride, to be honest. I don't know. Anyway, but there is white pride. And there's different philosophies of thought on being proud of your skin color. Some people think it's asinine and stupid. You're just born with it. You didn't have any choice in the matter. But I think the issue is more complex than that. Now, for someone who is part of the majority, wait a minute. I'm doing something right now. Okay, you gotta leave me alone. I'm sorry. You know what? I'm too lazy to edit this out, so I'm just gonna leave it in here. That was my mom, by the way. You can see that she's very okay. Anyway. What was I saying? Okay, white pride. Okay, well, the problem with being proud of being white is that it has connotations with white supremacy and racism. Being proud of being black, on the other hand, is associated with the civil rights movement and reclaiming your heritage, being proud of your origins and not being ashamed of them. So it has different connotations depending on where you're from and what race you are and things like that. So it's not as simple as just saying, well, I was born with it, I shouldn't care. No, it's more complex than that. I don't think there's anything wrong with being proud of being black. If you're black and you're proud, I think that's perfectly fine. If you're white and proud, it just suggests to me racism, because it has those connotations historically, and those are important considerations to make. But with that said, I don't think there's anything wrong with a white person in America being proud of the fact that they have Irish blood in them. I don't think there's anything wrong with being proud that you have German blood in you. No different than me being proud of being Sri Lankan. These are important. And yes, I understand that these things are still divisive in nature. But there is nothing stopping you from being proud of who you are while still accepting other people for being different. This is Enigma Hood signing off.